What's up, class? This is your boy, Professa Dre Marley, the Hood Professor, aka Louisiana Jones, you feel me? Now everybody shut the fuck up and pay attention. Cause today we gonna be discussing all the blood y'all walk through when y'all walk through the French quarters and the streets of New Orleans, you hear me? Unfortunately, you hear me, these streets is soaked with bloods that goes back hundreds of years before gangs, before any of that y'all like to blame violence on. This city has been plagued with death. You know what I'm saying? So we got stories that go all the way back to the 1700s. You hear me? For y'all to listen to it and just be amazed at the type of shit that go on in these little streets. You hear me? We're gonna finish this lecture in two parts. We're gonna start with the newest stories. You hear me? That either you or your parents have been alive for, and they will connect with y'all more because of what is going on politically and socially in today's climate. It's gonna hit home. You know what I'm saying? And then we're gonna go to the earlier years of New Orleans history with some older, more mysterious murder mysteries that people seem to kind of forget because of all the violence that's happened now. They tend to forget that this city's history is soaked in blood. So, without further ado, let's get to it with these mysterious murders.
Murder isn't something new to the city of New Orleans. No matter how much people want to place all the blame on gangs, long before the mob got here in the 1890s, there's been atrocities committed by human hand. Let's get started with the Axeman of New Orleans, one of the country's first cases of a serial killer. As the killer's name implies, the victims were savagely attacked with an axe, usually belonging to the victims themselves. In most cases, the home was broken into using a chisel on a back door lock panel, because at this time, that's how you lock traditional style New Orleans homes. The intruder then attacked the residents with either an axe or a straight razor, but the crimes were not motivated by robbery, with the victims usually being Italian immigrants. He killed 6 and injured another 6, with more usually linked to him that can't be proved. The information I'm about to provide has spurred multiple theories. On March 13, 1919, a letter purporting to be from the Axeman was published in a newspaper saying that he would kill again at 15 minutes past midnight on the night of March 19th, but he would spare the occupants of any place where a jazz band was playing. That night, all of New Orleans dance halls were filled to capacity, and professional and amateur bands played jazz at parties at hundreds of houses around the town. Now let's talk about more of the well-known stories on this list. The Red Room. Brennan's was founded in 1946 by Owen Brennan, an Irish-American restaurateur and New Orleans native. Originally called Vauquerie Restaurant and was located on Bourbon Street across from Old Absinthe House, but moved to its later location at 417 Royal Street in 1956. Now there are multiple ghosts in this building, but we're going to focus on the more creepy one. As one of the original owners continued to feel the grief of financial problems, he felt that his best option to escape the trouble was to murder his wife and child, then hung himself from a chandelier in the Red Room. Despite the mystery and all that happens in that room, the current owner still keeps the portraits up of all 3 of the previous owners that died in the room. There are reports of cold spots, portrait facial expressions changing, misty fogs, feelings of being watched, touched, and even the feeling of being hated. Last but not least, one of the more unknown, gruesome stories on this list. In 1927, 2 women named Teresa and Leonide lived together with their husbands, brothers named Henry and Joseph, and Teresa and Henry's 3 small children in the second-floor rooms of 715 Ursuline Avenue. The wives were known to mess around, and when housekeeper Nettie Compass arrived to clean up the Moity's apartment on the morning of October 27, 1927, a scene of bloody disarray greeted her. The frantic cleaning lady was soon joined by 2 insurance men who were conveniently nearby. In one of their memoirs, Healy described their discovery. We found red stains on the floor and saw a large trunk in the bedroom partially open. When I pulled up the trunk lid, a woman's body, arms, and legs severed from the torso were exposed. Since it was found Henry put life insurance on his wife days before the attack, and the manner in which the women were disembodied, it was found only a butcher would be able to make cuts like that, and Henry was a butcher. He was pulled from nearby Bayou Lafourche, and at first he maintained that the murders had been the work of a red-headed Norwegian seafarer whom he had been forced to assist. By Tuesday, November 1st, however, less than a week after the murders, Henry made a full confession, abandoning his tale of the villain seaman. His story goes, Henry returned home to find Teresa and Lee Knight packing their belongings in 2 large trunks. An enraged Henry began drinking, then went and purchased the murder weapon. When night fell over the quarter, the moiety women and children retired to their beds. In his confession to the district attorney, Henry admits that he considered killing himself and the children, but changed his mind when he imagined his wife running around with Joe Caruso and the rest of them. Here are some of the stories that are more recent that I feel will hit closer to home to you guys because of the political and social climate that we're in today. Jack Bowman and Addie Hall. Hall and Bowman fell in love during Hurricane Katrina when Bowman let her ride out the hurricane with him at his apartment. Once they survived the storm, they fell in love. Both of them were suffering from a mental illness called PTSD. Addie was molested and Jack was a discharged vet. They both used partying and drinking as a means to escape, and because of that, they were well known to be arguing on the streets of Bourbon. She was also a bartender that was known to flash police. When the party was over, though, they argued constantly. Then cocaine abuse came into play. The last argument they had resulted in him strangling her. He detailed it in her journal, and because their apartment was on top of a voodoo shop in the quarters, some theorized it was a demon from the shop below possessing Zach. On October 17, 2006, around 8:30 p.m., New Orleans police received a call from Omni Royal Orleans Hotel. A man's body was found on the roof of the parking garage next door. Upon arriving and seeing the badly distorted body and unsure if they had a murder, suicide, or tragic accident on their hands, the investigators began by searching the body for ID. In the man's back pocket, they found a note reading, in part, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send the patrol to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend Addie in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, along with the full documentation on the both of us, and a signed confession from myself, Zach Bowen." Police rushed to the address, a small apartment above the Voodoo Spiritual Temple. Once inside, they were confronted by something out of a horror movie. Despite the warm October weather, the apartment was cold. The air conditioning set on 60. The walls were spray painted with haunting messages of regret and pain, such as "I'm a failure," and instructions to call Zach's ex-wife and tell her he loved her. One message on the wall directed them to the stove. There, in a pot on one of the burners, was a human head, burned beyond recognition. In another pot were hands and feet. Inside the oven, in a large roasting pan, were arms and legs, also burnt. Investigators noted that there appeared to be seasoning on the limbs, and on the counter next to the stove were cut up potatoes and carrots. Inside the refrigerator, in a large plastic bag, they found the torso. Here's one of the more unknown stories on this list: the upstairs lounge arson attack. The upstairs lounge arson attack occurred on June 24, 1973, at a gay bar called the Upstairs Lounge, located on the second floor of the 3-story building at 141 Charleston Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana. 32 people died as a result of a fire or smoke inhalation. The official cause is still listed as undetermined origin, the most likely suspect being a gay man named Roger Nunez, who had been ejected from the bar earlier in the day. He was never charged and eventually took his own life in November 1974. No evidence has ever been found that the arson was motivated by hatred or overt homophobia. The Upstairs Lounge arson attack was the deadliest known attack on a gay club in U.S. history until the Orlando nightclub shooting. It was largely ignored in the aftermath because of the LGBT community that were the main survivors. During this time when we were still fighting police brutality and the system that was built against us, I feel it was important to bring this man to y'all attention. His name was Mark Essex. He was an American serial sniper who killed a total of 9 people, including 5 policemen, and wounded 13 others in New Orleans between December 31st, 1972 and January 7, 1973. He was killed in the second confrontation. He was spurred on by racism he encountered while enlisted in the Navy. He was also a one-time Black Panther member. Essex joined the United States Navy as a dental technician in 1969. He claimed he was subjected to 2 years of ceaseless racial abuse from whites. He went on unauthorized absence from October 19 until November 16, 1970. He was given a general discharge for unsuitability on February 10, 1971 for character and behavior disorders. After his discharge, he became involved with black radicals in San Francisco, California, and later joined the New York Black Panther Party. By late 1972, he was living in New Orleans, Louisiana, but did not join a local chapter of the Panthers. He trained in vending machine repair, and in November 1972, he was disturbed and outraged by the harsh response of Baton Rouge, Louisiana police to student civil rights demonstration at Southern University, a historically black university, which resulted of 2 black students shot by police. At the age of 23 and living in New Orleans, Essex began targeting white policemen for death, as he intended to retaliate for the police brutality against African Americans and discrimination he encountered in the Navy. On New Year's Eve 1972, Essex parked his car and along Perdido Street, a block from the New Orleans Police Department, he hid in a parking lot across from the busy Central lockup and fatally shot 19-year-old Cadet Alfred Harrell, and he also wounded Lieutenant Horace Perez in the attack. He then arrived at the then Howard Johnson's Hotel, now the Holiday Inn, across from Duncan Plaza. Upon gaining entry from a stairwell on the 18th and top floor, Essex startled 3 African employees of the hotel. Essex told them he was there only to kill white people. The employees quickly notified authorities. In the hallway by room 1829, Essex encountered Dr. Stagel and his wife Betty, a couple from Virginia on a honeymoon. He then forced them into their room, and after a struggle with Dr. Stagel, Essex fatally shot him in his chest and shot Betty in the back of the head. Essex dropped a Pan-African flag onto the floor beside the bodies of the couple as he left. On the 11th floor, Essex shot his way into several rooms and set more fires. Essex had retreated to the roof of the building, from where he and the men in a helicopter exchanged many rounds over many hours. As nightfall came, Essex found cover in a concrete cubicle on the southeast side of the roof. As he stepped out in the open to fire again on the helicopter, and after hitting the helicopter's transmission, Essex was fatally shot numerous times by police sharpshooters positioned on the roofs of adjacent buildings, as well as the automatic weapons aboard the helicopter. An autopsy later revealed that he had more than 200 gunshot wounds.